Welcome to Thrive Deeper, the show based on the Thrive Bible reading guides. This is an ongoing conversation about God's Word with Thrive's author, Dr. Matthew Jacoby, and your host, DJ Payne.
G'day and welcome to episode 114 of Thrive Deeper. It's me, your old mate DJ Payne here, and on this fortnight's episode, me and the wonderful Dr. Matthew Jacoby sit down in this, our first part in a three-part series on the book of Leviticus. Okay, now don't get too excited. I know how much you love the book of Leviticus. Listen, it is an important book. It's the central book in the books of Moses. And on this episode, it is our job to get you excited and to understand what an important and, dare I say it, magnificent ancient book this is. So keep on listening as we get into this, the book of Leviticus. Also got something very special to tell you about something that's happening over at Thrive Perspectives. So grab your Bible and your copy of the Thrive Daily Reading Guide and let's go into the book of Leviticus. Matt, you're back from a break.
Yep. Had a great time down in Tassie. We were allowed out of our state.
Okay. Are we still allowed out of our state now?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, good.
So
good.
we fled and had a great holiday.
You, from the pictures that I saw, amazing coastline down in Tasmania where you were.
Tasmania, the most underrated destination.
Yeah.
Really, go to Tasmania.
This is an unpaid sponsorship spot.
Yeah.
Now, this is a bit, just to give everybody a little bit of a sneak peek behind the scenes, we haven't recorded together for a while. We sort of banked up a bunch of episodes for the month of January, really.
Yeah, because the studio's being renovated and it's looking amazing.
The studio that we record in is getting renovated in my backyard. It's still coming along. It's probably a couple of weeks away from the time that you hear this before we can get back in there. So we are recording in my makeshift office in my house, and we've never been closer together. We're like in each other's pockets here, and we're in this tiny bedroom in the back, back of the house here. So it's a really unusual setup.
That's okay.
Welcome 2021.
Yeah, that's right.
So if it sounds a little bit different, or if it sounds like Matthew and I are, let me assure everybody, when I say we're really close, just for any rule keepers out there, we're definitely 1.5 meters away.
We're definitely 1.5 apart. That's
definitely.
Right. Yeah.
So we say all of that to introduce you to a brand new copy of Thrive. The new copy of Thrive is out for the year,
and it's an exciting one. Isn't it?
I think it's exciting. You think
I definitely think it's exciting.
But part of this episode this week is to convince everybody out there who's got their new copy of Thrive, open it up and seen the book of Leviticus.
Yeah.
And gone.
And groan. Yeah. I can hear the groans.
What are you doing to us,
And
Matt?
that's understandable from the content. I mean, it's the most complex book, really, of the Bible. It's a book that originally was a kind of a instruction manual for the priests.
Yeah.
However, and this is the important bit, in the literary conventions of the time, you always put the most important thing in the center. Now, the first, the Torah, so the first 5 books of the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay. The central kind of problem of these books.
Yes.
The problem that's introduced in Genesis 1-3, okay, the problem of
the fall
man's
of man.
alienation from God, okay.
Yep.
The central question is, as Psalm 15 puts it, who may ascend the hill of the Lord?
Wow.
So who can enter into God's presence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the big issue of these first 5 books of the Bible, okay?
Yes.
And the answer to that book is in the middle of the middle book,
which is
the Day of Atonement.
Let's do it all together. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus.
That's right.
Numbers, Deuteronomy.
That's right. So the book of Leviticus is placed in the middle. It's not a skip over this because it's not very important. It's put in the middle because it is
Really important.
Really important.
Wow.
Now, that's, again, according to ancient literary conventions, they put the most important thing in the center. It's the classic, and it's a structure that we've perhaps referred to before here. It's the chiastic structure.
Yeah,
Now we're
the
putting
X.
our hands together,
Like the
forming
X.
a cross.
Yeah.
Chi is the Greek sort of X. Okay,
Yes.
so it's the, that center point is, and often you see in the way that texts are structured as the most important thing is in the center. Think of if you've seen a menorah candle.
Yes.
With it's like this tree with you've got the central one with the
Some people
three
would
each
pronounce
side.
it menorah.
Yeah, that's right.
The Jewish menorah there.
That's
yeah.
right. And you've got the center candle and the three each side.
Yes.
So, that's a sort of a picture of that kind of chiastic structure.
Yeah.
So,
A real symmetry.
yeah, that's right. So don't skip over Leviticus because actually the answer to the question,
Yeah.
like the real juicy theology, like the central fundamentals of the faith are in the book of Leviticus. And if you don't understand this, you're going to miss actually the climactic point. Okay.
Wow.
Now, not only is Leviticus this chiastic moment in the first 5 books of the Bible, but within the book of Leviticus, the central chapter, the chapter 16 is the Day of Atonement.
Wow.
And that's in the middle of the book. So you've got even within the book, you've got a chiastic structure.
Okay.
With this moment when the high priest enters into the Holy of Holies one day a year.
Yes.
And that's right in the middle of Leviticus, which is right in the middle of the Torah.
All right. Well, now, part of our job on this episode, Matt, and is for everybody who's faithful Thrive readers and listeners. Thank you so much for supporting everything that we do and you understand what we're doing. The next 3 months are Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
February, March, April of 2021. 3 of the final 3 books of the first 5 books of the Bible. But some people would call it, the works of Moses there, that first 5 books.
Or the Pentateuch, as it's known. Yeah.
So we want to get you excited because a lot of people really skip over these books. Yeah. And I can understand that. If you're not well versed in the whole story of the Bible, if you're coming at it for the first time, this feels like you're reading something from the planet Mars.
Yeah.
It feels like
that's right.
You're reading something from a completely different universe that has no relation to ours.
And yet, again, to underscore the importance, it's the book of Leviticus that lays the sort of conceptual framework, like the key ideas that you're going to read about in the New Testament, ideas about the blood, about atonement, about offering, even ideas about worship, about purity, all sorts of all of these key ideas, priestly ministry, the mediating role of Christ, Christ himself is only intelligible in the light of the book of Leviticus.
Now, say that again, Matthew, because this is really important.
So in order to understand the person and the work of Christ, the commentary on the person and the work of Christ essentially is the book of Leviticus.
Yeah.
And so this is something worth wading through. It's very much a different world to ours. But it's a world that we need to get ourselves into.
Yeah.
It's like a language it's a conceptual, pictorial, symbolic language that we need to learn to speak in order to understand everything else in the Bible.
Let me just put it in my dumb way, right? My favorite books of the Bible are the Gospels, the life of Christ.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
And the book of Hebrews.
That's right.
No surprise here. I'm a broken record. I don't believe you can fully understand what Jesus is saying, the mission he is on, why the Pharisees and the Sadducees were so against him, and then to fulfill it, what the book of Hebrews from, I believe, the team that wrote the book of Hebrews, Paul and the gang who wrote the book of Hebrews, were able to answer all of those questions that the Jewish people had. It's all around these first 5 books of the Bible.
Yeah, that's right. And there's so many things even in the Gospels, and we've been reading the book of Luke, so it's a great segue. Are only really intelligible certain events and qualms that the Jewish religious leaders had in response to Jesus are really, again, only intelligible within this thought world, within this kind of symbolic thought world. You know, for example, Jesus, when he forgave sins, and for them that is absolutely heretical because there is a way that sins get forgiven, and it's according to the Levitical law.
Yeah.
That's how sins get forgiven, you know, through, the priests offering the sacrifices. And again, it raises the question, well, who is Jesus that he can forgive sins?
Yeah.
Well, he is the high priest. He is the sacrifice. It was his blood that is shed. You know, he is the very tabernacle of God in the midst of it. So, you know, Jesus is going to fulfill all of the symbols in the book of Leviticus. So this is, you know, I'm a big one for just getting back to the fundamentals of the faith. We have this drift effect, I think, as Christians, and we need to keep ourselves glued to the central fundamentals of the faith. And so what we want to do over this and the next 2 episodes, 3 episodes, did you say? Is really demystify this book.
Great way to put it.
So help you to understand and get into the thought world of this book. And I'm going to start, if I may, unless there's anything else you want to say by way of introduction.
One last thing about this book of Leviticus, and we'll jump straight in, and you'll get the picture there. We've set it up pretty lofty. We've given it all the lofty stuff. Now I want to bring it back home and go. It is an incredibly practical book.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, a lot of it is going to be foreign to us. A lot of it is going to almost disgust us because we don't live in the times that these people lived in. Some of it is going to trouble us, but you have to almost time travel in your brain to thousands of years ago to a Jewish people living in the wilderness and go, okay, how did this, why is what's the practical reasons why this is? And once you start putting yourself in that mind, you go, okay, this actually makes sense.
Yeah.
This makes sense.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I just wanted to set that up as well.
No, that's good. So I'm going to start actually at the end of Exodus.
Okay, great.
Because these books flow from one into the other. So this is really important because the very last section of Exodus sets us up, raises this question. Okay, so it says in Exodus 40:34, then the cloud covered the tent of meeting. So he's built the tabernacle, okay, which is like a three-dimensional theology of salvation. God dwells in the Holy of Holies. When you walk in, I'm going to picture this for people. It's a rectangular courtyard with a rectangular building in the middle. You can jump on to Google Images, do search on the tabernacle, and you'll see it there.
And it's a big tabernacle. It's a big walled tent.
Yeah, that's right.
Type of thing.
So you walk into the courtyard, and you're looking towards the holy place and the Holy of Holies, where God dwells in a symbolic.
And that's at one end of the rectangle.
And that's at one end of the rectangle. Okay, but between you and that, there's a big altar. The altar of burnt offering. Okay, now this is immediately saying, this is how do I close the gap between me and the God who dwells in the Holy of Holies? Yeah. And the answer has everything to do with that altar of burnt offering. Okay, so the tabernacle is this three-dimensional this structure that you enter, and that things happen there that communicate to you how man can be reconciled to God. Okay. And lots of different rituals are going to be performed in there that all have important symbolic weight. Yep. Okay. So at the end of the book of Exodus, it says, then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Okay, so this is the tent of meeting is the enclosed tent, holy place and the Holy of Holies, this 2-roomed tent in the midst of the
rectangle.
Yeah, the rectangle. Okay, and Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud settled on it and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Okay, so this sets up the problem. Moses is not able to enter now. Now, previously there'd been a tent of meeting, a sort of provisional place where Moses, and he did enter, right? But now he's built this according to very strict instructions from God, and the instructions are all of these instructions are going to be, it's going to be incredibly important that they follow these instructions, because this is three-dimensional theology. It's not like I'll add a bit here and add a bit there, because it's like changing your theology if you do that. So, so he's built this tabernacle according to very strict instructions. God now, the glory of God fills this tabernacle, and Moses is not able to enter, and this now establishes the problem. Talks about, then it goes on to talk about their journey and the cloud of God's presence, guiding them and so forth. But the problem here is established. Moses can't enter. So it raises the question, well, who can enter and how? You see, so that's where right at the end of Exodus, we have the sort of setup for the key issue that is going to be solved. Now, in Leviticus chapter 9, and I'm going to scoot forward to this now, we basically have this climactic moment, because we're doing big picture here, aren't we? So, so this is okay. It says this, then Aaron lifted up his hands towards the people and blessed them. This is after all the sacrifices in the system has been established, and it's being practiced now, okay? For the first time, they've put into practice the sacrifices that we're going to read about in a moment, okay? After doing that, established priesthood, established sacrificial system, it says, then Aaron lifted up his hands towards the people and blessed them, okay? And he came down from offering the sin offering and the burnt offering and the peace offerings, and we're going to read about those in a moment. And Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting, and they came out and they blessed the people. And the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people. And fire came out from before the Lord and consumed the burnt offering and pieces of fat on the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. Can you imagine that moment, right? This is the climactic moment. This is the answer to that problem. Moses could not enter. But now the sacrifices are established. They practice the sacrifices. Moses and Aaron are able to enter. They come out with a blessing for God's people. And the fire of the Lord descends and consumes the offerings
that they've made
as God's approval over what's just happened. It's amazing.
Okay. I love the fact that you've given us a really shorthand view to at least get us excited.
This is the big picture kind of view of what's going on here. So now we're going to get into what's in between. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 9 of Leviticus.
Yes. Now let me ask you two questions that people might be thinking as they've heard you explain those first 9 chapters and the end of Exodus. Number one question: why can't they enter? If God is in the Holy of Holies and they've set up the tabernacle, they've got the, and within that they've got the tent of meeting, which is question. At the back, and within that tent of meeting they've got different articles, and within that they've got the Holy of Holies where the very presence of God is.
Yes.
Well, God loves everybody, and God wants to have a relationship with us, so He's there, and so why can't we all enter and enjoy God?
Great question. Simply because God is holy. Now, the word holiness means distinct. In God's case, He is holy, 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 as the angels declare in Isaiah's vision and in Revelation. He means He is absolutely distinct, but also absolutely pure. Now, there is a kind of there's a sort of a three-dimensional scale. When we think of our spiritual state, I want you to imagine a line of moral, immoral. We tend to think just on that line. I want you to add think of that on a horizontal axis. I want you to add a vertical axis to that, because there's another key concern. This is going to explain a lot in the book of Leviticus.
Right.
And that is a scale of pure and impure. And they're related, but the problem is that of spiritual impurity, that because...
well, isn't that just sin?
Yeah,
isn't just bad and good? But there's something different.
Yeah, that's right. But it causes this problem of spiritual impurity.
Okay.
So it's not just a matter of not being good enough, or it's a matter of actually becoming stained with guilt, spiritually impure, like defiled in a sense. I mean, these are important concepts because the concept of defilement is going to be ingrained into this people because it's a spiritual problem. And it's a spiritual problem because, it's not just a matter of God's got a sheet and he's got a record of wrongs and well, you did something wrong, so go away. It actually, there is a deeper problem of defilement that occurs. That means that God, who is absolutely holy, cannot have contact with that which is unholy. God is perfectly righteous, cannot embrace the guilty. That's a matter of justice. But it's not just a matter of justice is an attribute of God, so that's one of the reasons that God cannot embrace, even though God loves us, wants to embrace us, yet because of God's justice, there's a problem there. But there's also the issue of God's holiness. I sort of want to make this a little bit more three-dimensional, okay? Because of the tendency that we have to reduce everything to very dry moralistic terms.
Yes.
We're not good enough, so God won't accept. Well, it's actually not. It's not just about that. There's this sort of third dimension to this, and that is this sense of spiritual defilement, that we have become unholy, we've become imperfect, we've become tainted, as it were, spiritually. And so this causes a rift, a very infinitely problematic, terrible rift between us and God. This is the experience that the Israelites are having when they come to Mount Sinai, and there's fire on the mountain. They're not to even touch it's like the Mount Sinai in a way is like a new kind of Eden. It's this place, the dwelling place of God. And remember, Eden had the cherubim with the flaming sword. Stay out of here.
Yeah.
Because why? Because you are unholy and imperfect and guilty, and God is holy, and the two cannot be joined together.
Okay, now question. Let's do a bit of a thought exercise here. Again, I love the fact that you've brought in the very visual cherubim and in Eden you've brought up Mount Sinai when Moses is receiving the commandments from God.
Yeah.
And now we get the tent of meeting in that same sort of way. This is a picture of God on earth, with men. And we say that the holiness of God, keeps us at a distance.
Yeah.
Let's do a thought exercise. I know what you're going to do here. Let's say we do. Let's say we go, but God is love and he's going to accept me anyway and it's okay.
Yeah.
And I'll just go into his presence without it. Now, the reason why we can't get in there, I'm sort of leading you here with the question, the reason why the fiery cherubim here isn't to protect God.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It's not to protect God from being defiled by us.
Yeah.
It's actually to prevent us from being destroyed by the glorious presence and holiness of God.
Amen.
By the justice of God. So there is a big problem here. Now this is gold, right? Because the beginning of our spiritual journey means that we must feel this problem. If you don't feel this problem, you are not even going to begin. This is Psalm 51, the sacrifice of God are a broken spirit and a contrite heart. It's the willingness to feel the problem, to feel the distance. And a lot of people complain about this sense of God's distance and then just sort of put it out of there. Oh, it's, I just feel like God's far away, so I'm not even going to try. But actually, you are right in the middle of the most important revelation that you can have. Yeah. Like, problematize that. Like, it's like that, feel that problem for a bit. Yeah. And the interesting thing in my experience is that God, and, I regularly go through this thing where I sense this sense of distance and life is this constant process of, me kind of drifting but constantly coming back to God, because of course we can now because God has made a way. But the constant experience of feeling that absence and feeling the problem is this crucial first step experience. So if you feel like God is distant, if you feel unworthy, if you feel impure, you actually don't back away from God. You are actually in the middle of the most important initial revelation that you can have.
Yeah.
But don't stop there.
No.
Don't wallow in that, because the door is open. This is what we're going to see now. God has made a way. But the way is it's very important that we don't take this for granted and think, well, this is how I am, but God forgives me anyway, as though God can just forgive a guilty person without actually doing something. God did something in Jesus Christ about this problem.
Yes.
And all that we're going to read about this sacrificial system is basically connecting people, and the Israelites in this case, with what God had done to provide for their forgiveness.
Fantastic. One last point before we get into this, because I know that some people have either heard this or are thinking that themselves.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah,
I think
you have.
Yeah,
I think you have. And if you've got questions, as always, say this every episode, please reach out and contact us. We'd love to hear from you. One last question from me as we set up the book of Leviticus. Now, Matthew, I'm a Christian, but I'm more of a New Testament Christian than an Old Testament Christian now, because God in the Old Testament, I really don't like this God guy in the Old Testament, and he's very different now. I like this New Testament God, and Jesus is nice, and he accepts everyone, and I can do, and like he just loves everybody, and we see that in there, and there's no problems, and all this stuff in Leviticus. Look, that's all Old Testament God stuff. Not really my cup of tea. I'm just going to skip over this.
Can you pass me that ruler over there so I can symbolically whack you? The New Testament is the fulfillment of everything that we read about in the Old Testament. I mean, sure, start with if you've not read the Bible. I recommend starting with, say, the Gospel of Luke. Maybe read Luke, Acts, then perhaps Romans. Sure. Okay, for sure. Yeah. Start with the New Testament. That's fine. But at some point in our faith, you are part of a story that begins in Genesis chapter 1. It's your story, right? Yeah. It's your story. And not only are you part of that story, and you need to understand that story, your faith is actually going to be birthed out of that story. But the Old Testament sets up a language of faith that you need to learn to speak this language of faith. You need to immerse yourself in this conceptual world, because you're not going to be able to move ahead unless you are.
And God, let me just say this. This is what we know in the New Testament. God is still the same.
Yeah.
The purity of God, the holiness of God, the fact that he cannot stand any sin or impurity in his presence, not because he's precious or not because he's timid or not because he can't, because whatever comes in that is unholy within him is obliterated, is destroyed. That's right. It's like saying, "Hey, I'm made of wood. I can jump in the fire." Yeah. No, you can't. You're going to be burned. You're going to be burned up.
Yeah.
So he's still the same.
That's right. Yeah.
And the what we read about the Leviticus, the process that we read in Leviticus that God outlays, it will not. How do I say this? Jesus will not be completely the answer to the problem unless you understand the problem.
That's right. And so God gives us he wants us to feel that problem, lest we take for granted or lose sight of. This is a really important aspect of the spiritual life, is constantly allowing ourselves to feel the problem, because it just grounds us and connects us more in what God has done to solve that problem. So that's a bit countercultural, the idea, because again, in our culture, we want to jump straight to, God just forgives everyone, it's all fine, everything's fine. No, everything's not fine. There's a really big problem.
Yeah.
We need to let ourselves feel that problem.
Yes.
And that's the beginning of moving forwards. So this is what this is where Leviticus starts. Now, God is going to map this out, what God has done to secure our forgiveness, to fulfill his perfect justice in Jesus Christ through an act of sacrifice, okay? Now, as we move into Leviticus, it's worth understanding the fact that by this stage, in this part of the world, sacrifice is a language that has been readily understood.
Yes.
It is the standard way. It's because, it says, it starts off, the Lord called Moses, this is Leviticus 1, the Lord called Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, when you bring an offering. So it's assuming that you want to bring an offering.
Yeah.
Because there's something innate within human beings, and we see this in all different religions. Yeah. This sense, I need to bring something to God. Now, this is, in the ancient world, when you came to a king, you'd always bring tribute of some kind. Okay, you would bring a gift, you would bring something. So it's a relational kind of gesture. So in all the religions of the ancient Near East, and this is true of even religions in the world today, there is this practice of bringing offerings. The atonement aspect is less common. It's not completely uncommon, but it's far less common.
Define atonement for us.
Yes, okay. Is this making, closing the distance, but it's actually, atonement means making satisfaction for. So making things right. So injustice has been done. To make atonement is to satisfy justice.
Okay, so in a practical example, I'm parked out the front of my house, you've come over, you've accidentally hit my car. To make atonement for that, you would...
Yeah, I would cover the damages. That's right. So that's... Now, the reason why I think that's not this aspect, this atonement aspect, like in ancient Near Eastern religions, you brought an offering to win the favor of the gods. Okay, not so much to close the gap in the sense here, because for these people there is always a gap.
Yeah,
you don't have a relationship with Baal or with Ra or with. You don't have a personal relationship with these are gods far away. Even in Hinduism, there's still this distance, with Brahman or with that's a pantheistic religion. So anyway, but it's probably not the best illustration. But in the closing. That's not even a possibility in these other religions. That's where the atonement aspect of offerings. However, offerings are very common as a way of kind of winning some kind of... So I'll make an offering and hopefully the God will send back some blessing. Yeah. Okay, that's sort of the best that you could get. Yeah. This Leviticus is going one step further. Now, it's answering the question, who can dwell in the holy presence of God? Now, the ancient... the average ancient Near Eastern person is, well, no, don't be ridiculous. As if that's even possible to dwell in the presence of a holy God.
Yeah, exactly, because it's just too terrifying.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely terrifying, and who would want to?
It's not even a question worth asking for the ancient Near Eastern person.
Yeah, who would want to? Now, the other, and we're going to go to a break, but I wanted to throw this in.
Already? Gee, time's slow.
No, we barely got into it.
Been going 5 minutes, haven't we?
You've been away, mate. You've got a lot to say, I know. Yeah. The other backdrop that we need to keep in mind in this, and you triggered my memory there of one of the other points that I wanted to make here for the book of Leviticus.
Yeah.
This is the story. We're in the middle of the story of the holy God bringing his people, the Israelites, into a land of Canaan that is full of the wrong type of sacrifice. Of the wrong type of God worship.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Of the most evil practices. And evil sacrifices, witchcraft. I mean, whatever evilness that you can imagine is being practiced in the land that they're about to go to. So Leviticus, part of the backdrop of Leviticus is you're about to enter into a land. And some of the laws and the rules and the regulation and the sacrifice stuff is going to be God saying, they're doing it the opposite way.
Yeah.
This is my way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're doing it to try to win the favor of the gods. And of course, you never quite feel that you have, because there's never any assurance that you have in these ancient religions. You just got to keep offering more and more. Now, if you really wanted to give the best that you could possibly, then you would offer up your own children as sacrifices. That was it. Got that now. And that was quite a common practice in the ancient Near East, as well as elsewhere in the world. You know, in the Aztecs and so forth, human sacrifice, and it seems to be this sense like I never quite feel like I've given enough to God. I mean, do you ever feel people? You know, this is again ingrained sense. I never feel like I've done enough, right? And this is exactly what Leviticus is going to answer that sense, because even we experience this. I just never feel like I've done enough. So what they would do is like, I'm going to even offer my own children, and that in an ancient context, because your children represent your, you know, they're your progeny, they're the continuation of your own life in a sense. And so, you know, there are these what were really abominable practices, and called out very much again and again and again in the Pentateuch, as we're going to see. This, of course, is what when the famous story in Genesis 22 of Abraham, when God says, offer your son as a burnt offering. Interesting that burnt offering is already, it's kind of an idea that's already a language. The language of offering, again, well established. So much established that when God says to Abraham, offer me your son, you know, even the fact that he says, offer me your son, Abraham's not surprised at that. Yeah. Because again, this is common practice in the ancient Near East. Oh, well, okay, the great God is, you almost sense that Abraham's just waiting for this to happen. You know, it's like, because in ancient language, this is the ultimate offering that you can give to your God. So, and in a sense, what God is saying there is the willingness to give me everything is important, but you never, ever need to do this. That's basically what this is saying. It's like a statement in the context of an ancient world. Genesis 22, I'm talking about, situation of Abraham offering Isaac, is a statement of God saying, you never have to do that. Because, why? Because God has provided a lamb. And of course, you know, God provides the lamb caught in the thicket, and that's sacrificed instead of Isaac, right? Yeah. So that Genesis 22 is pointing forward again to this. It's anticipating this, what we're going to read here in Leviticus.
Awesome. Okay, let's take a quick break. We've just set it all up for you, everybody. Leviticus, here we go. Let's finally dive into it. But first, just a quick break. I want to share something really important with you here on Thrive Deeper. It's your old mate DJ Payne here in 2021, and I'm excited to let you know that we have got so much happening here at Thrive headquarters. Yeah, the studio is underway. It is almost operational. Cannot wait to get in there and start producing some more content for you. But as we look back at what's been happening over the last few months of the podcast, I tell you what, we have had more feedback on 2 episodes of our sister podcast, Thrive Perspectives, than I've had pretty much for anything else. The last 2 episodes of Thrive Perspectives that we've done over the last month have been an episode dedicated to what Matthew has learnt in the year 2020 and what I have learnt in the year 2020. They're both very personal, dare I say it, almost very revealing about what God has been teaching us in our own personal life. We took 1 episode each and we really shared what was on our hearts and where the Lord God has been leading us in our lives. Now, I don't often recommend the podcasts that we do. It sort of feels a little bit proud, or it feels a bit vain, some sort of level of vanity to tell people, hey, I'm really proud of what we've just put out. But can I let you know something really really seriously, I'm really proud of those 2 episodes. I think those 2 episodes of Thrive Perspectives really give you an insight of the heart and where God is leading both Matthew and myself as we move forward together and thrive. So I want to recommend, if you have not subscribed to Thrive Perspectives yet, well, go ahead. It's all for free. You can find it on any podcast platform, or just head over to our home on the internet. That's at thrivetoday.tv. But if you're already subscribed to Thrive Deeper, whatever app you've used to subscribe to that, you will find Thrive Perspectives as well. Just do a search for Thrive Perspectives and you'll find it right there. All right, that's enough from me. Recommending more podcasts from us. I know, it feels a bit weird, but I really wanted to share that with you in case you'd missed it. All right, let's get back into the book of Leviticus, into the actual substance of this incredible book here on Thrive Deeper. Thrive Deeper, episode 114. This is the first of a 3-part series we're doing on the book of Leviticus. This is the center of the first 5 books of the Bible. And Matt, you've already set up probably one of the most important parts of the first 5 books of the Bible, the book of Leviticus.
Yep, that's right.
Now, we've set it all up. We've given a lot of background to it. I think we've done, if I do say so myself, a pretty good job of showing people why this book is so important. Yep. Because you need to hold that in mind, because it's hard going. This is going to be a hard trek as we work our way through the book of Leviticus. Take us through.
Okay, so he's going to introduce us now to 5 different kinds of offerings. And the first one is the most important. It begins with what's known as the burnt offering. Now, the burnt offering is the kind of coverall. It's the act of worship. And so it's beginning here makes sense. Like, you might think it should begin with a sin offering or something, or a guilt offering, but it begins with a burnt offering because this is also the most familiar. Burnt offerings. Up to this point, we've read already about various people, the patriarchs and so forth, offering burnt offerings, okay? So this is something understood, but so in a sense what's going to happen is God is taking the idea, this familiar idea, but he's going to shape this now with a deeply symbolic significance. But this is the sort of act of worship. This is the worship offering. Okay. That is going to also involve this very loud statement about how does the worshipper even come to God in the first place. Okay, so I'll read. I'm going to read this from the ESV again. Slightly more literal translation is probably valuable here. The Lord called Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the livestock from the herd or the flock. If he is offering a burnt offering from the herd, he shall offer..." So now, again, notice there, if he is offering a burnt offering, as though they already kind of know something about this. But God's going to say, but no, this is now how I want you to do it.
Yes.
I don't want you to do it, like you said, like the other nations do.
Yep.
Like, for a while, that was okay, just a simple burnt offering without any of the other stuff. But now I'm going to be very specific because I want to teach you something here.
This is great. God starts at the place where there's familiar.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a touchstone that they understand.
That's right.
And he's going to be very precise in how they do it.
Yep, that's right. He shall bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting. So he's going to bring it to the courtyard, just in front of the altar there. He shall bring it to the end. Now, first of all, what is he bringing? He's bringing a male without blemish, male animal without blemish. It's got to be perfect, because the imperfect cannot be a substitute for the perfect. This is a picture. This element of substitution. Okay, the worshipper who comes is imperfect, hasn't met the mark. So symbolically, the animal has got to be perfect. because it's got to be the perfect dying for the
And it
imperfect.
also says something about the perfectness of God as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The sinless, unblemished
that's right.
nature of God.
And actually, you see this element in other ancient Near Eastern religions. It's got to be, you've got to give your best. Okay, so that's it's also saying that as well. So there's a bit to that. He should bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting, that he may be accepted before the Lord. Okay,
not the animal. But the person bringing it.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. He shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him. Okay, so this is an act of identification. He's putting his hand on, even perhaps a sense of transferal. I mean, it doesn't say that, but certainly one of identification.
Symbolically, this is representing me and my family.
This is representing me, okay? And so the sacrifice is accepted on his behalf. So there's a sense that the sacrifice is him giving himself, but also this is pointing to this idea that the sacrifice is kind of dying in the place of the individual. Okay,
and we really get that in the next verse here.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, then he shall kill the bull before the Lord. Now, it's the actual person bringing the animal that actually kills the animal. Oof. So now, what you need to imagine here is that this is a domestic. You don't just go out and grab a wild animal. You go to your own flock. Now, this is the currency of the ancient world. So this is really valuable to you. This is your livelihood as well. But when you bring these animals, these aren't just animals that exist in some fenced off. This is a shepherd society. They actually got to know these animals. And so this is a very impacting kind of moment. Like you're bringing this animal that you have raised. You put a lot of work into this. This is the best one. You're bringing that one, and you're it's lived there with your kids, and you probably set it aside even. You like beforehand, because you want to make sure that it doesn't trip up or damage itself. So you've kept it close, to your tent in a little corral there. Your kids have fed it. They've probably given it a name. I mean, I don't want to push but this is an impacting thing. Okay, this animal is going to be your substitute. Okay, so this is, and then you're going to bring it before, and you're going to kill this animal.
Now, in some translations, I'm reading from the Holman here in verse 5, when it says he's to kill it or slaughter it, it uses the word the bull. Now, are we suggesting, what have you got in the ESV?
Then he shall kill the bull before the Lord. Yeah.
Now, is bull saying it's always a cow?
That's right. Yeah. So for different, you have options here. Actually, depending on your resources, you can bring a bull, you can bring a ram, or you can even bring doves in some cases. Like it's whatever your ability. Whatever resources you have, it's going to allow for that.
Was it always a male?
Yes.
Yeah, and the maleness of the animal is, I know that today for farmers and people who breed, animals, the male is more valuable, than usually, the females in the animals. Was that the same concept back here?
Look, I think so. But there's also a kind of symbolic thing here as well. I mean, it's the idea of headship, that the sort of spiritual association. It's not that again, because there's this kind of priestly idea that surrounds this idea of headship in the family, and perhaps there's something to do with that.
Okay.
Again, I want to underscore, nothing to do with equality or, but I think this would have made sense in an ancient context.
Yes.
Now again, we don't have the same sort of context here, but in that context, that kind of made sense. Okay. So it goes on to say, then he shall kill the bull before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, okay, so the priests who are descendants of Aaron, and the priests shall bring the blood and throw the blood against the sides of the altar that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Now, the blood is is the life of the animal. In they understood that the life of the animal is in the blood. Okay, so when you bring the blood to the altar, this is like the burnt offering is a sacrifice of worship, and so this is life has been given here. Life in a sense of making atonement for, but also the life of the worshipper is symbolized here. So, giving the whole life, and so it's spattered against it's like being offered on the altar, okay? That's why the blood is there. Now, on the Day of Atonement, as we're going to see in a future episode, the blood's going to be brought right into the Holy of Holies as this kind of ultimate proof of payment. Then he shall flay the burnt offering, cut it into pieces, and the sons of Aaron, the priest, shall put fire on the altar and arrange the wood on the fire. And Aaron's sons, the priest, shall arrange the pieces, the head and the fat and the wood that is on the fire on the altar. But its entrails and its legs he shall wash with water. And the priest shall burn all of it on the altar as a burnt offering, a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Now, the idea here is that this is the only offering where the whole animal is completely burnt up. What you're calling the burnt offering or the worship offering here. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the picture here is that the whole animal, which kind of represents you. Remember, this animal represents you. It's put on the altar. It's burnt up, and in a sense, the symbolism or the picture here is that it's transformed into smoke, in a sense, that goes up to God. Yeah. And it becomes this pleasing aroma to God. And the sense is that you have become pleasing to God. You are now, by offering yourself on the altar, via this animal, you actually have become a pleasing aroma to God. That idea of atonement that you mentioned before, that the gap has been closed. Yeah. We now can enter. That's right. Okay. Yeah. Now the other thing I want to put out here for and again the rest of the chapter goes into So and then it goes sheep and that's then right. So here's another couple of options. Yeah. If his gift is from the flock, sheep or goats, and then it also allows for birds if you're turtle doves and young pigeons. That's right. Now for those animal lovers or vegans, okay, or both who are reading this, who are absolutely their stomach is turning, while looking at this. Let me just assure you, that is a good feeling. Yeah. We're not meant to be reading this going, this is awesome. Yeah. As in there's a cost here. There's blood everywhere. So this is where we often don't think of this. That entrance and that altar there before the Holy of Holies is a slaughterhouse. Yeah. There's people coming all the way out of their families with animals to have this burnt offering. The priests are these working, basically holy butchers who have got blood everywhere. You can imagine how gruesome it was. Totally, yeah. And you're talking entrails and all. It's just the whole thing is messy. Even with the poor turtle doves in the end, you would have ripped them apart this way. You would have twist off that. It's really gruesome. There's it's meant to be like that, and the picture here is such a beautiful picture. This struck me just recently. This journey, and I think it's good to actually reflect on this and go through the journey. Yeah. Okay, so now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring myself in all my my imperfection. I'm coming with my sacrifice, which ultimately, remember, let's just keep reminding our listeners that this is referring to Jesus, the perfect sacrifice. Yeah. But in the outer courts here, things are messy. It's really messy. There's blood everywhere. It's there's this kind of chaos, and there's this messiness around this process of coming to God because it brings to the surface all of our mess. And so, often what we do, I think spiritually, is that as we come near to God, when we come to approach God, the first thing we experience is this blood and guts, and in a spiritual sense. And we want to back away, we want to leave that. Well, no, actually, you need to go through that. Bring bring out the blood and the guts and all of that sort of stuff. It's all the messy stuff going through the sacrifice in order to connect with what Jesus has done. And then you go, and this is the beautiful picture of this, you go from the messiness of the blood and the guts in the outer courts. If you were to be the priest, and this is a journey we can all take now spiritually. In that time it was just the priests. If you go there and you walk into the temple curtain, into the holy place, you walk into a place of perfect peace. From a place where you've got bleating of the sacrifices and the blood and the guts and the noise, the chaos and the carnage, and you go from that, because you went through that, you enter this place of perfect peace where you've got the lampstand that symbolizes the light of God. You're in the presence of the light of God. You've got the table of showbread that reminds you, I'm going to provide for you. God's saying, I'm your provider. And you've got the altar of incense in there with the beautiful smoke going up that reminds you that you and your prayers are a sweet fragrance before the Lord. And to stand in that holy place after the carnage of the this is a journey that we can actually take spiritually.
And yes, and it's important to understand the actual real journey that the Israelites had to go on.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like that idea of the Old Testament and the New Testament being different, we twist it. We twist it unless we understand how, this is going to sound horrible, how good we've got it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that's right.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't imagine being, the head representative of my family.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I've got to bring one of my boys one at a time, maybe all of the boys at a certain time, and say, right, you're coming with me today.
Yeah.
You have to learn what we have to
that's
do
right.
here.
Yep.
So come with me, and then they are going to be standing there, eyes wide open as I'm slaughtering, cutting open the neck of an animal.
Yep.
Blood's going everywhere. The thing's been cut open, and then I'm allowed to usher out of the thing.
Yeah.
And the family is going to, I have to do that next. Like, it's
that's
this,
right.
it's the most, gruesome, type of thing. And we've got to, when we're reading Leviticus, I think we need to carry that weight with us a little bit of we've sort of covered the why, but also the very bloody practical aspects of it all.
Yeah. And I think the lesson is that in order to get into the holy place, you have to go through that carnage in a sense. It's the blood and the guts, the entrails need to come out. We need to bring everything out before God, bring out the carnage, bring out the failure. It's the willingness to go through that in order to enter. It's such a powerful picture, and when you're looking in to the temple, where you come in on the eastern side of the tabernacle, and you look, and even the fact that the altar is kind of blocking your view to the tent of meeting, where there is a sense of meeting with God. It's like, no, you got to go through this first. It's once you offer yourselves on the altar. And of course, Paul refers to this, doesn't he, in Romans chapter 12, where he says, therefore, in view of God's mercy, let us offer ourselves as living sacrifices. And he's referring to the burnt offering. Yeah. That this is actually our acceptable act of worship. It's his commentary on the burnt offering. That we still need to do this. We need to offer ourselves on the altar that we might be transformed into a pleasing aroma to God. It's such a powerful picture. Anyway, look, that's the burnt offering. Now I'm going to quickly cover. Yeah,
we've only got number one. You said there was 5.
Yeah, that's right. So as I said, the burnt offering is sort of the most general. It was the most regular offering. It's this offering of worship. It's to offer oneself wholly to God through this act of atonement. Okay. The next offering is the grain offering. This is a kind of response to God's provision for us. This is where you bring an offering of your grain from the first fruits of your crops. Now, in ancient Israel, bread was really the staple part of the average person's diet. And in some ways, grain, more than gold or silver, was what people depended on for sustenance. So to bring an offering of your grain was to offer to God really part of what sustained your life.
Yeah.
You know. So that's the significance of the grain offering. It's a way of giving thanks to God for his provision. And it was also a declaration of faith. God is my provider. Okay. So this is, we would do a similar thing here where we would bring a portion of our income, the act of tithing.
And there's definitely a sense of that with the grain offering, because once the portion of the grain offering, God says, okay, use this much in this way, but then the rest of this grain offering, the bread that you're making, give it to the priests.
Yeah, that's right.
And it belongs to the priests. Why? This is their job.
That's right, because it maintains the place of worship, So, very much so, the grain offering helped to maintain the services in the place of worship. So, so that's similar principle. So these are not, even though we don't do these things in this form,
yes,
we still do all of these things.
The principles there.
Yeah. Yep. In reality, actually, not just symbolically, but in reality.
Yep.
Then we have what's called the peace or the fellowship offering, and this is basically an offering, as you see, after the burnt offering. The other offerings now are more specific. Mm-hmm. So the burnt offering is a very general kind of act of worship. Mm-hmm. The other offerings are in response to something specific, a specific thing that you want to do before God. This is an offering. The peace or fellowship offering is the offering that I bring if God has done something for me. So this is when the psalmists say, I will bring an offering. God, if you answer me, I will bring an offering and I will declare your praises in the presence of your people.
Wow.
They're talking about this offering. This is also the offering probably that the father of the prodigal son brings, where he says, kill the fatted calf. This is a fellowship offering because they're going to share they're going to share the offering together. Now, basically what you would do, the difference with the peace or fellowship offering is that it wouldn't all be burnt on the altar. It wouldn't be given over to it would be sacrificed in the presence of the Lord.
Yep.
And the blood and all of that. You go through that similar ritual. So there's a lot of repetition in these rituals. And then you would actually share that. It would become the center point of a celebratory feast that you would have with your friends and family. So you'd say, come and gather with me. I've got something to celebrate. You would take your animal. They would come and you would celebrate together eating that animal. So it's like, as I said, it's like the fatted calf that was sacrificed for the prodigal son.
Yeah.
Come and celebrate with me because my son that was lost is now been found. So,
and this is in chapter 3, obviously the third offering that they're being told about. At the end of it, this is a really interesting little footnote at the end that I think is a little thread to remember as we read through the Leviticus. Moses teaches that the Lord is telling them that all the fat belongs to the Lord.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
This is a permanent statute throughout your generations forever. Wherever you live, you must not eat any fat or any blood. So we've already seen that the blood from the first sacrifice is the life of the animal, and that's what it needs to go on the altar. Now we've got, the fat belongs to the Lord as well.
Yeah, and that's not just because, again, it's not because the fat's the bit, because fat in our culture is the bit that you cut off and throw away. Not in that culture. It was the richest part.
Yes, exactly.
In a sense, it was the most valuable part.
Yeah.
So that part is given to God, and the rest of the animal is shared by the party. Now, it's probably healthier for the party as well.
Yeah.
But the point is that the most valuable part is given to God. And, of course, blood, it's interesting to note in other sacrifices in the ancient world, blood was often retained and eaten.
Yes.
But the blood is never, you don't ever eat the blood in an animal according to the biblical law, because this is the life, it's the life of the animal, and that is always to be given over to God.
Yeah. Chapter 4, we have the fourth offering, the sin offering. Yeah.
So we have here a sin offering and a guilt offering, and I'll talk about these together because there's been a lot of discussion around what the difference is between these two offerings. And basically, the sin offering is about purification, and the guilt offering is about making things right. Now, there's a slight difference between those two things. So purification is about this act of, in a sense, it kind of sums up two parts of really what Jesus did. Jesus takes something away from us.
Great point, yep.
But also gives us something, right? So he takes away our guilt, but he also imputes to us his righteousness. So we are declared righteous, okay? So we are made right. He gives us, he makes us right. So the taking away, or expiation, if you want to use a technical term, that's what the sin offering is going to deal with. It's specifically about dealing with the problem of impurity. Okay. Now, it's interesting. It says there, when someone sins unintentionally, in what we're in chapter 4 here, it talks about when someone sins unintentionally, and a lot of people get worried about this. Like, hang on, don't we always sin? Isn't sin by definition intentional? I make a choice and I do the wrong thing. No, this is what this is trying to. What this is saying is that this isn't a get out of jail free. I can do whatever I want. And because I know that at the end of the day, I can just go to the tabernacle. I mean, you can imagine that people could possibly think this.
Yeah.
Because this would be, for example, a criticism of people elsewhere in the ancient world. They would be thinking, what? You mean you guys can offer this sacrifice and you are forgiven, that your God just forgives you without you having to live up to something or work for this, or
and then you can just walk
giving
back
enough,
out.
and then you can walk back out.
Do it again.
That's right.
Bring another
I mean, this is what is this? This seems nonsense. No, this is making very clear. But by unintentional, it means not that sort of. This is not. Oh yeah, I can sin because at the end of the day, I can just go to the. So these sacrifices are for people whose ultimate intention is to live for God.
Great
so,
point.
Yes, you have made bad choices. You've yielded to temptation. So, of course, okay, there's an element of intentionality to that. That's not what this is talking about.
And we'll see in some of these laws that we have where you have to make a sin offering coming up.
Yeah.
Some of them are, well, you can understand why someone would fail in this thing unintentionally, like whether it's in a battle or whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a death of someone. You go, oh, I didn't mean to hold this dead body, but now I've been made.
Yeah, there's that as well. Yeah,
So there's a little bit of, in day-to-day life, God will say, okay, you are going to sin.
That's right. And there's the sense that in doing that, that causes a problem because you have become impure again, right?
Yes.
And so you now have that sense again, oh man, I feel impure.
Yeah.
And that's dealing with that problem.
So the sin offering is for purification. We see that in 4. Chapter 5, he gives some cases that require sin offering.
Yeah.
And then is what you're saying, the guilt offering, is that at the end there of chapter 5 where he says, in my translation, it says a restitution offering?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
That in other translations would be a guilt offering.
Yep, that's right. So
guilt or restitution.
That's right. So I'm just going to pull this up here. So the guilt offering is the restitution. This is making things right. So this is often coupled with if you're bringing the offering because you've ripped someone off or you've taken something. Now again, this is important because it. Important answer to this problem of intentionality because if you rip someone off or if you take something, there's an element of intentionality to that. Yeah. So it's not that that's not provided for.
Yeah, and this is more of I get in the couple times that I've read it, it felt like, okay, this is the area where the high priest or some of the priests have heard a case. It's almost like a judgment, out of a court case.
Yeah.
They've gone, okay, we understand the problem that you've got with your neighbor. This is what we believe that the law says. Okay, Matt, you need to give a restitution.
Yep, that's right.
You need to give this value to make it right, and that's what this offering is.
Yeah, that's right. So it's coupled. So that making restitution to this other person is coupled with this act of making restitution to God, and I think this is making an important statement about restitution, because not only making up with the other person isn't the full answer to the question, because you haven't just sinned against another person. In sinning against another person, you've actually sinned against God. And so restitution, you need to make things right with God and with that other person. So this is saying something about this guilt offering is saying something about what is required when in terms of restitution, that is towards the person as well as towards God. So they are basically the offerings,
the five offerings,
the main offerings. Now I might just add the fellowship offering. There are different, and we're going to find out a little bit later. There are a few different types of fellowship offerings. So
it's in chapters 6 and 7.
In chapter 7, included that there are thanksgiving offerings, free will offerings, and wave offerings. They're basically different kinds of fellowship offerings that you bring when that's the third category that I discussed.
I love the fact that we get in those first 5 chapters, or actually, first 5-6 chapters, we've got the 5 different offerings. We see, these 5 different situations. Next couple of chapters, we have clarification, more detail on each of those offerings, a little bit more. Okay,
different variations.
This is a little bit more about the
offering,
practice. Answering the questions that people might have about those, and then and this is, I think, this is where we'll have to wrap it up for this episode. We've got chapter 8. Really, really briefly, the ordination of Aaron and his sons.
That's right.
As a priesthood. Is there anything you want to mention on that?
Yeah. So this is. This is the establishment of the priesthood. So it's the priests that are going to do this, that these people are set aside. And this priestly role is an important symbol of what God ultimately wants all of his people to be. It had said back in Leviticus 19, God had said, you are a holy nation. If you obey my commandments, and these commandments are at the center point of God's commands, then you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Okay. Now, to be a kingdom of priests, you have to be holy. Okay. So they have to be a holy nation and a kingdom of priests. So ultimately, God wants all of his people to be priests. And of course, under the new covenant, we are all priests of God. But this is a kind of symbolic representation of what we can do. Like we enter the presence of God with our sacrifice, which is Jesus Christ. In order to come out and be mediators of blessing to the world. Now, that's what we see. So the priests are ordained. This is a kind of picture of what God wants all of his people to be.
And it's like it's a special service that God has told Moses that they have to go through.
Involves sacrifices and everything. It's interesting also to note that the sacrifices required, going back to the guilt and sin offerings, in the sin offerings, the sacrifices for the priests are greater. You have to offer more. Yeah. It's interesting.
Very interesting. There's also a really interesting point about them boiling part of it to sustain themselves. And the most interesting bit in this whole chapter for me is that when they are ordained and they go through this really, like you say, like they double down, like the sacrifices are doubled down. Moses then says, the law is, to become the priest, you must remain in the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere for 7 days. And it's like, what now?
Yeah.
Like, how did that work? Like, how did they do that? It's almost like we're going to separate the men from the boys here, because this is hard work.
Yeah.
Being a priest before God, before the Israelites, this is a tough job.
Yeah.
You've got to be up for it. You've got to endure.
That's right. I mean, your main qualification is that you are in the presence of God. I mean, this is how we are equipped as priests, all of us being priests of God, is being in the presence of God in that 7-day period is that beautiful sense of completion. That's what enables us. We carry this blessing, which we can then mediate. So once you have Aaron and his sons are ordained.
Well, and then so we get all it's great. I love the way that Leviticus does this. Please be patient if you feel like you're rereading it again, because in chapter 8 we get the law, the rules, and then chapter 9 we get they do all the rules. They actually do everything that is said in chapter 8.
Yeah, that's what we see in chapter 9. So this is on the 8th day. So after their 7 days of just really essentially waiting on God. I mean, this is just so rich. Then they offer the offerings, and this is where you then get to this climactic moment.
Yeah.
At the end of chapter 9.
Oh, it's amazing.
Then Aaron lifted up his hands towards the people. I'm going to read it again and we can close with this because this is just gold. Then Aaron lifted up his hands towards the people and he blessed them. This is sacrifice has been offered. He, as the priest now, is equipped with God's blessing, right? God has given him a blessing. It's not just for him, it's to give away. This is what it means to be a priest of God.
Yeah.
He lifts up his hands towards the people and he blesses them. And he came down from offering the sin offering and the burnt offering and the peace offerings. Okay, he's offered these sacrifices that have been prescribed. And Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting. Okay, so this is the problem of Exodus, again, chapter 40. They couldn't go in then.
Yep.
Okay. The glory of the Lord is still in there.
Yep.
But now they can go in.
Yep.
Into the glory of the Lord. And it says, and when they came out, they blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people. Right. So they go into the glory of the Lord, and they can now.
Yeah.
They come out, and they basically and
bring the glory.
They bring the glory of the Lord to the people. What a rich picture
Yep.
of what Christian priestly ministry, which is all of us, essentially is. And then it says, and fire came out from before the Lord and consumed the burnt offering, the pieces of fat on the altar. When all the people saw it, they shouted and they fell on their faces.
It's a beautiful way to wrap up one of the points that we've been talking about, and I think it's a point that we're going to be talking about a lot in the book of Leviticus. God's holiness and God's purity. When we are confronted by that, as the people of Israel are here, it's not a blasé, happy feeling.
Yeah,
it's not a nice, warm fuzzy.
Yeah,
they shouted.
Yeah,
and fell face down on the ground.
That's right. Well, they are. This is a cry of, it's like the weight of the glory of God. Has appeared to them and come upon them, and it's and this is what happens when we meet these characters that have these encounters with God, like Isaiah and John in the book of Revelation. It's so overwhelming that they fall down with a shout of, and this is exactly what you've got. This is actually an amazing moment. It's one of the most amazing moments because it's not just an individual. This is a moment when all the people. This is outlining the possibilities here. Now, the people are going to stray from this, but this is this mountaintop moment here in the book of Leviticus that showed them what is possible. And it's not just, and if it's possible for, and I'm going to underscore this, if this is possible for them who were partaking in symbolic sacrifice, how much more for us who have the real thing in Jesus Christ? Like, we have access through Jesus Christ into the Holy of Holies, into the glory of God. And if we are willing to feel the problem, if we are willing to go through the carnage, to, spill the entrails, shed the blood, offer ourselves wholly on the altar, okay, we can enter into this place of peace in the holy place where the light of God and the provision of God and where we become a pleasing aroma to God, and we can dwell in the Holy of Holies, the very direct presence of the Holy of God. And then we will know joy and peace. That is the goal of all things.
Oh, man, when Matthew hits the right biblical note, gives me shivers up my spine. I tell you, when he almost quoted Hebrews there at the end of our discussion, where Moses and the people of Israel were able to be made right with these symbolic sacrifices that was just a foreshadowing of what Jesus was to do. My goodness, how much more blessed are we that we have the real thing. We look back to the real thing of what Jesus did as our sacrifice. Woo! Good stuff there from Matt. I should actually do a podcast with him one of these days. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully we've whet your appetite for this amazing book. Make sure you've got your copy of Thrive, the Daily Reading Guide. Head over to our website at thrivetoday.tv and consider supporting us financially. We can't do what we do without your help. All right, we'll see you next fortnight here on Thrive Deeper.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Thrive Deeper. Matthew and DJ really appreciate the questions and thoughts about what you're reading in the Bible as you go through it with Thrive. Our home on the internet is thrivetoday.tv. You can contact us, ask questions, see all of our resources and much more at our website, thrivetoday.tv. The Thrive Today Network is on Facebook. Our Facebook page and links to our community groups are waiting for you. Just search and like Thrive Today page in Facebook now. Visit ratethispodcast.com/Thrive Deeper. If you appreciate what we do and want to help us reach more people, go to ratethispodcast.com/Thrive Deeper. Until next time, our prayer is that these shows will inspire you to go deeper into God's Word and thrive. This was another DJP.FM production.